Over the last 2 years, Max Holloway pulled off one of the most improbable career reinventions we've seen from any fighter his age. After a decade of being the guy who couldn't quite get past Alexander Volkanovski, he moved up in weight, walked into UFC 300 against Justin Gaethje, pointed at the canvas with 10 seconds left in a fight he was already winning, and knocked him out cold with 1 second on the clock. He walked out of that building with the BMF belt and one of the most iconic moments in the history of the sport. Then he defended it, beating Dustin Poirier at UFC 318 and sending a legend into retirement, becoming the first man to ever successfully defend that title. And then, on a Saturday night in March, a problem that had been quietly following him around for years finally caught up. The moment Max Holloway's back hits the canvas, this fighter turns into something else entirely. On his feet, he's the highest volume striker the sport has ever produced. The second the fight goes to the ground, the whole thing starts to wobble. And Charles Oliveira spent 25 minutes making him pay for it. Which brings us to the last 4 months of Max Holloway's career. He walked into that stretch with one job: prove there was still a version of him that could win a fight at the highest level. By the time it was over, he'd lost a belt, changed weight classes, beaten Conor McGregor, and told the world he isn't fighting again this year. So how much has one strange, chaotic run of 4 months really changed the future of Max Holloway? Let's get into it. What Holloway did between April of 2024 and July of 2025 was special. But at UFC 326, Charles Oliveira found the crack that nobody had really pried open before. Not the chin, not the cardio, the floor. The numbers from that night are brutal, and they tell the whole story. Oliveira attempted 13 takedowns and landed 5. He held over 20 minutes of control time in a 25-minute fight. 20 minutes and 49 seconds on top, against 1 minute and 36 seconds for Holloway. The all-time UFC volume record holder landed 26 significant strikes across 5 championship rounds. 26. This is a man who once landed 445 in a single fight against Calvin Kattar. All 3 judges scored it 50-45, a shutout. The BMF title, the belt he'd made the most talked about accessory in the sport, changed hands for the first time ever, and the crowd let them hear it. The building booed through the championship rounds. Nate Diaz, the man who the belt was basically invented for, publicly hated it. For a title built entirely on the promise of violence, it was about as far from the Gaethje knockout as you could possibly get. But here's what actually mattered about that night, and it's not the belt. Holloway's whole identity as a fighter is pace. Drown you in volume, break you across 5 rounds, be the guy still throwing in the championship rounds when everybody else is gassed. That is the engine. He holds the UFC record for significant strikes landed with over 3,600, and the record for total strikes with over 3,900, and nobody else in the history of the promotion is within 1,000 of either mark. Oliveira unplugged the engine. Not by outstriking him, but by never letting the fight exist in the place where Holloway is great. And once a blueprint like that is on tape, every wrestler in 2 divisions has it. And that's the part that follows him around now. It's not that one grappler beat him. It's that a 36-year-old man who has spent his whole career being called a submission specialist walked in, decided he was going to wrestle instead, and did it 5 times in 25 minutes against a guy who had never been handled like that. Every matchmaker saw it. Every fighter in the top 10 at 155 saw it. And the ones who can't hang with him for even 2 minutes on the feet now have a very simple set of instructions for how to beat Max Holloway. And it doesn't require them to be a better striker than he is. It requires them to be heavier and more stubborn. That's the fight game. You don't get judged on your best night. You get judged on your most recent one. And his most recent one before July was a 50-45 shutout. Which brings us to July 11th. And the strangest win of Max Holloway's entire career. UFC 329, T-Mobile Arena. Conor McGregor's first fight in 5 years, a rematch of a fight from 2013 that McGregor won on one leg with a torn ACL. 13 years of buildup, and it lasted 69 seconds. McGregor opened the fight by charging forward with a jumping kick, missed it, and landed awkwardly on his right leg. He went down, he got back up, he went down again. And at 1 minute and 9 seconds of the first round, referee Mike Beltran waved it off. TKO, injury. Max Holloway got his hand raised in a fight where he threw almost nothing. When I saw him hurt, I was thinking, come on, call this. He was done. I just wish him a speedy recovery. McGregor walked straight out of the octagon without doing his post-fight interview. Holloway got the microphone and immediately did what a smart veteran does with a bad ending. He asked for the do-over. There's going to be a Holloway-McGregor 3, he told the building. One more time for the boys. So here's the honest evaluation of that win. Competitively, it tells us nothing. 0. He fought for a minute against a 37-year-old man who'd been out of the sport for 5 years and who blew out his knee before either of them landed anything meaningful. It's a win in the record book, that's it. But financially and strategically, it might be one of the most valuable minutes of his life. And the context around it matters too. 2026 has been a strange year in the UFC. It's the first year of the Paramount deal. The promotion put a card on the south lawn of the White House, and through the first stretch of numbered events, the older fighter kept winning the main event over and over again. Gaethje beat Pimblett, Gaethje beat Topuria, Oliveira beat Holloway. Experience has been the most valuable currency in the sport all year, and Holloway is right in the middle of that age bracket where guys are either aging out or cashing in. Because he's now 28 and 9, he's got a main event win over the biggest star in the history of the sport, and he took basically no damage doing it. And in a career built on absorbing punishment, an entire fight camp that ends with him getting through unscathed is worth more than it sounds. This is a man who has absorbed over 2,000 significant strikes in the octagon, more than almost anyone in the sport's history. A free win is not nothing when that's your ledger. And the second thing that came out of UFC 329 is the part almost nobody is talking about. That fight was at welterweight, 170 pounds. Max Holloway spent basically his entire career as a featherweight. He fought at 145 pounds for more than a decade, won the title there, defended it, and then in his 30s he started living at 155. And now, at 34, he just fought at 170 against a guy who'd called it his domain. I put in this 170 work. We worked our tails off, especially turning around that fast after the March fight. I want to feel this domain he's talking about. That's the tell. He didn't take the McGregor fight at welterweight because it was the only way to make it. He took it because he wanted to know what he feels like when he isn't killing himself to make weight. And after 14 years of weight cuts, that's a real question. And the answer changes his entire career map. Here's why it matters. Holloway's biggest structural problem at this point isn't his chin, it's his frame. At lightweight, he's the guy giving up strength in the clinch and getting held down by bigger, thicker wrestlers. Going up to welterweight doesn't fix that, it makes it worse on paper. He'd be giving up size to men who cut from 200 pounds. But the trade-off is real. No cut means a full camp of actual training instead of a camp built around making weight. It means walking into fight week with water in his body and strength in his legs. And for a fighter whose whole game is output, being able to actually train at full intensity for 8 weeks matters more than most people think. And the physical math is uglier than the vibes suggest. Holloway is 5'11" with a 69-inch reach. That's a long featherweight and a normal lightweight. At welterweight, that's a short guy with short arms standing across from men who walk around at 200 pounds and are longer than him in every direction. His entire style depends on being in range constantly, eating 1 to land 3, and outworking you for 25 minutes. Doing that against welterweights is a completely different physics problem than doing it against featherweights. There's also the damage question, which nobody likes bringing up but everybody is thinking about. Bigger men hit harder. Holloway has already been knocked out once by Topuria in a Division II weight classes below the one he just fought in. If the plan is to spend 2027 trading with welterweights, that's a real risk, and it deserves to be named. So which is it? Honestly, we don't know yet, because 69 seconds against an injured man told us absolutely nothing about how Max Holloway's body performs at that size. That experiment hasn't actually happened. All we know is that he wants to run it. And that's what makes this next decision the messiest one of his career. The idea of Max Holloway retiring has quietly become one of the most uncomfortable conversations in MMA. And it has nothing to do with him being bad. For most of the last 2 years, he was excellent. But let's actually look at where he sits. He's 34. He's been fighting professionally since 2010. He's 28-9 with 37 pro fights, and more than half his career has been spent in 5-round main events against the best fighters alive. The BMF belt is gone. He was knocked out at featherweight by Ilia Topuria. He was shut out at lightweight by Charles Oliveira. And the last version of him that looked truly untouchable was a version that had just gotten one shot off with a second left on the clock. Then there's the division around him. And this is the part that really complicates it. Justin Gaethje, the man Holloway knocked out at UFC 300, is now the undisputed lightweight champion. He won the belt on the South Lawn of the White House in June, breaking Ilia Topuria down over 4 rounds until Topuria's own corner pulled him out of it. Ilia Topuria, the guy who handed Holloway the only knockout loss of his career, is no longer champion of anything. Charles Oliveira has the BMF belt, and Alexander Volkanovski, the guy Holloway went 0-3 against, is still hanging around the featherweight picture. Read that back. Every single man tied to the biggest results of Max Holloway's career is either holding a belt he isn't holding or has already beaten him. That's the landscape. So what's the actual path? There are 3, and none of them are simple. Option 1 is the lightweight title. That means a 4th or 5th top 5 fight in a division full of wrestlers who now have the Oliveira tape. And it likely means fighting Gaethje again, a man he already knocked out, which is a fight that can only cost him. He beat him. There's no upside in proving it twice. Option 2 is welterweight. Deeper, bigger, more physical, and full of grapplers who do to him exactly what Oliveira did with an extra 15 pounds. But it's also the division with the least mileage on his body, no weight cut, and a rematch with McGregor sitting right there. Option 3 is the one nobody in Hawaii wants to say out loud, which is that a fighter with this much damage on the odometer, this many records already locked in, and a guaranteed Hall of Fame slot has almost nothing left to prove. And after UFC 329, he gave us the clearest answer we've gotten. He's not fighting again in 2026. He's talking about coming back in 2027, and the reason he gave wasn't tactical. With that March fight and this fight, I came out unscathed, but I owe my family some time. That's a 34-year-old man with nothing to prove choosing to sit out the back half of a calendar year. And here's the thing, that might be the smartest move he's made in 2 years. Because think about what his 2026 looked like. A 5-round beating in March where he got held down for 20 straight minutes, then a fast turnaround into a completely new weight class in July. That's 2 full camps and 2 main events in 4 months for a fighter who has been in more wars than almost anyone active. Time off for a striker like this isn't decline, it's maintenance. Poirier fought until his body told him to stop. Holloway is choosing to stop before it does. A 6 to 9 month break at his age, with the volume of damage he's already absorbed, is worth more than any fight he could take in the fall. Of course, there's a real cost. Layoffs at 34 are not the same as layoffs at 26. Ring rust is real, timing is the first thing to go, and every month off is a month the divisions move on without him. He came back from a 10-month gap after the Topuria knockout and looked great against Poirier, so we know he can do it. But there's a version of 2027 where he comes back slower, and the whole conversation gets ugly fast. And then there's the piece of this that tells you more about where Max Holloway actually is than any of the fight stuff. In July, days after beating Conor McGregor, he was back home in Hawaii running the first ever Max Holloway Foundation Golf Classic at Kapolei Golf Club, raising money for underprivileged kids in West Oahu. The event sold out. Justin Gaethje played in it. Daniel Cormier played in it. The guy he knocked out at UFC 300 flew to Hawaii to golf for his charity. That's not a fighter chasing one more contract. That's a man building the thing that exists after the fighting stops. And the timing is not an accident. You don't launch a foundation in the same month you're planning your next title run. You launch it when you've started thinking in decades instead of fight camps.
He's already got the resume. Former undisputed featherweight champion, former BMF champion, and the first man to ever defend that belt. The all-time UFC records for significant strikes landed and total strikes landed, both by margins nobody is touching in our lifetimes. The single fight record of 445 significant strikes, the single round record of 141, and the Gaethje knockout, which is going to be in every UFC highlight package for the next 50 years. Whatever happens in 2027, that's already a first ballot Hall of Fame career. The only real question left is what he wants to add to it, and what he's willing to pay to add it, which brings us all the way back to McGregor. Because if the goal is money and legacy instead of belts, a trilogy fight with Conor is the biggest non-title fight the UFC could book. McGregor's knee is a huge question mark, and at 37, coming off 2 catastrophic leg injuries in his last 2 appearances, there's a real chance that fight never happens at all. But Holloway called for it 30 seconds after the stoppage, and he wasn't being sentimental, he was doing math. So when I say this changes everything for Max Holloway, I'm not talking about one fight. I'm talking about a guy who lost the belt that defined the best stretch of his career, watched every rival around him take a different path to the top, moved up to a weight class he's never seriously competed in, got the strangest win of his life against the biggest star in the sport, and then, at the moment when a younger version of him would have chased the next fight immediately, chose to go home, start a foundation, and give himself the rest of the year. That's not a fighter running out of options. That's a fighter finally choosing them. And after 14 years of taking every fight the UFC put in front of him, that's the biggest change of all. So here's my question for you. If you were running Max Holloway's career, would you chase one more title run at lightweight, stay at welterweight and book McGregor 3? Or would you tell him to walk away on top? And do you think that time off saves the back half of his career or costs him the last real shot he's got? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want every move of Max Holloway's next chapter broken down the same way, go ahead and subscribe. There's a lot more coming, and I'll see you in the next one.